zeka. Kwa hiyo hatutaweza kuzidisha muda wa kikao zaidi ya saa 12:30. Nafikiri kutakuwa na kikao maalum kitakachorejelewa Alhamisi, ndiposa maseneta kama Uchilo Wayako na Christine Zawadi Gona waweze kuchangia. Senator Ongeri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute towards this very important debate. First, let me say this, that in any nation, in any country, the element of cohesion is so important for the survival of its own citizens. And that's why, if you look at the historical perspective of this nation, when in 2000 to 2002, there was this contentious clause of Article 2A of the Constitution. And when we went around, and the chair was Professor George Saitoti, and I was the vice chairman, whether we should amend that clause, everybody was saying, yes, there was no need to be able to have a single party. We need a multi-party democracy. And when was this put? When this decision was put to vote at Kasarani, all of you, those who were there, will remember that a lot of people opposed that proposal. And at the end, the president saw, in his wisdom, late President Moi, that it was prudent for the nation to move together so that we avoid any controversy that may arise, and ask the membership of KANU at that stage to allow Article 2A of the Constitution to be in, and that ushered in the multi-party democracy that we have today. And I remember his vice president then joined the DP and subsequently became the president of this nation. Again, if you remember, run up to 2007, we had what we call skirmishes, tribal clashes, and many other nasty situations. And that enlisted Kenyans to look for a way of understanding one another. And we had the Serena event, the Serena negotiation team, headed by the late His Excellency Kofi Annan, and we were able to manage that item extremely well. And I was a member of that committee as well, and quite a number of members of the senators who are here in this house. That brought in a constitutional moment, because the recommendation coming out of that committee then ushered in the 2010 constitutional moment that we agreed upon. And again, in order to put history into perspective, when we promulgated the 2010 Constitution, it was agreed that 80% of that constitutional articles were all right, but the 20% of it needed to be corrected. And as you know, our Constitution clearly spells out there shall be a review of constitutional boundaries on every 8 to 10 years. And that constitutional moment is now. It's now more than 10 years since we promulgated that constitutional, and that 20% needed to be looked at. Normally, this initiative would have been carried out by the IBC, but unfortunately, because of the 2017 acrimony in the final results of the presidential vote, this ushered in a controversy that saw the country split in the middle. And let us not cheat ourselves. Let's accept one moment that the handshake did bring about peace in this nation. And peace is a priceless commodity. You cannot argue against it. You cannot be able to say that there was no peace. And therefore, when I see members of this House arguing that this is not an opportune time to amend the Constitution, they seem to be oblivious of the fact that this tranquility that they are enjoying now is as a result of that handshake. And therefore, the handshake at its moments of truth, the handshake at its moments of light in this nation, that it brought the two antagonists together, protagonists and antagonists together, to be able to pull out for purposes of record of this House. If all of you remember, the BBI was launched in Kisii County. And therefore, we were the first county to be able to launch the BBI. And at that time, we did enumerate the items that needed to be covered in the BBI. And finally, when the BBI report was ready, Kisii County was again the one where they launched the final BBI product. What baffles me today, that we took part in the launching of the BBI, we took part in the ushering in of the BBI report, but we end up with 0 constituency. That in itself is not fair. And I think it's a matter that needs to be looked at, because when I look at the BBI report, it has very many good points, but what I really needed to bring about is, yes, it was by popular initiative, because it was anchored on the Article 257 of the Constitution. This was not a parliamentary process. And let's not argue whether it's a popular or it was for 2 people or not, but the issue is that it was a popular initiative, because a lot of Kenyans bought in, because they bought in the peace dividends that they were enjoying at that time. What we now need to do is look at these articles that have been elaborated in this Constitution, whether they are suitable or they are not suitable. We don't have to fight about it. We need to argue intelligently together. We need to consult each other intelligently together and see what is the best way for the Kenyans to move forward. Now, one of the things that I need to say is Clause 3, as inserted Article 114 on economy and shared prosperity. One of the nagging problems is there are 2 levels of government, the national government and the county government. But the sharing of those resources hitherto has been confined to about 15%. The Constitution now clearly spells out, this proposal in the BBI clearly spells out that this is no longer going to be day-to-day business. What is going to happen, that every county, when it comes to shareable revenue, they will be able to get 35%, and it's being anchored in the Constitution of Kenya. This is a good thing. We cannot say it's bad, and nobody's going to deny the counties to get the 35% shareable revenue that they have been denied for the last 10 years. And I think when it goes to that level, it will be a good thing. When it comes to the question of devolving the resources to the ward level, again, in this proposal by the BBI, they have quite cleverly argued that we can be able to create what you call a county assembly fund, which will be able to help in the area of devolution, because at the moment, the governors do not give, some of the governors, not all the governors, some of the governors do not give resources to the county assembly to function independently. And I think in this BBI, there's a moment for us to be able to create a fund for the county assembly so that they can be able to share those resources with the county assembly, and the county assembly will be in a position to oversight also the county executive on the funds and the resources that have been appropriated to them through the DORA and CARA process. And that's a good thing. And thirdly, that of the county revenue, both the national shareable revenue and the on-source revenue combined together, they should appropriate 5% as ward development fund. This will bring equity and equality to the ward development fund, because at that level, there is so much that has been left out. Some of the wards have been developed properly, others have not been developed equally, and therefore there will be a sense of equity that will be brought in this kind of resource allocation to the ward level, and therefore the development will be even and will be okay and will be proper. So in terms of resource mobilization, resource sharing, there has been enough adequate legal framework which have been put in place that will benefit from this particular item in the BBI proposal. I'm going through, because if I had to go through the text that I had written here, it would take too long. I want to summarize it. So that's the element of it that I'm quite happy with, and I don't think I have any qualms with that kind of proposal, because it improves on the current constitution, which is only 15%. One of the elements that I have seen in this proposal is that hitherto, this shareable revenue that goes to the county governments were unable to access the resources that have been allocated from the national government to the county government, simply because we have either not agreed on the division of revenue allocation, or we have not agreed on the CARA, County Allocation Revenue Bill. And this has caused immense delay and difficulties for county governments to operationalize their activities. And therefore, in this BBI, there is a proposal that the control budget can approve up to 50% of the shareable revenue, so that the county governments cannot come to a standstill and start borrowing money from the banks to be able to support the activities of the county governments, and therefore make them functional, not dormant. And this is a good arrangement in the BBI report. And I think that's a report that we should take on board, and we should agree that this is correct. There are many other proposals that have been also put in this BBI report. For instance, the appointment of ministers and the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister from the Parliament, from the National Assembly to be specific. For the first time, you know, we have been having problems of accountability and oversight in this place. When we wanted to oversight a ministry, you had to write a letter through the chair of the relevant committee to be able to go and source the information. And one of the things I've seen, that the chair of the committees have been very frustrated, because sometimes the ministers are unable to respond to their answers that they need to bring to this house for debate and discussion. This has been amended. Therefore, ministers coming from Parliament, it's a good thing. I know at my time, when we were ministers, not only were we answerable to the Parliament, as we are answerable to the constituencies, we are also answerable to the cabinet of the matter we bring to the House for debate and deliberations. And therefore, there would have been no excuse for government to say we are not represented in the House of Parliament, and therefore we cannot be able to provide this information. We are not even allowed to step in the precincts of Parliament unless by invitation. Now, this element has been cleared, and I think we're quite happy with that arrangement, because it helps us to be able to do well. So, in as far as that arrangement is concerned, again, one of the contentious issues, every election, there's been contestation, there's been disputes, there have been problems, there have been fights, loss of life, loss of opportunities for Kenyans to do business. And therefore, this BBI has been able to bring in a structure that will help us to address those issues that are very important and very critical. The only thing now I want to say, Mr. Speaker, is when I look at the constituency sharing, the 70 constituencies that have been alienated by Parliament, by BBI, to go to specific counties, that I'm uncomfortable with. Because, for instance, take Kisii County. Kisii County, we have a very large population in Bobasi constituency. There's no way the people in Bobasi, because in the last constitutional review, they were promised that they will be the next online to be given an additional constituency. Come this time, during the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, Bobasi constituency was on the list of one of the constituencies to be split into 2 constituencies. But when it came to the final report of BBI, that constituency is not there. what do I tell the people of Kisii County? That now you don't have a constituency, you were there before. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics says you were entitled to a constituency, you are not there any longer. So how are they going to be convinced? And in the last constituency review, they had been assured that they will be able to be captured in that. That's going to be very difficult, Mr. Speaker, and therefore I appeal whoever is looking at this that they must know how to factor in Bobasi constituency to be split into two. Kisii town itself is a growing town. The population is very high. South Mogrango is a growing constituency. The population is very high. In fact, in order of priority, it will be Bobasi, number 1, South Mogrango, number 2, and then Kisii Township, number 3. And we contribute in the economic prosperity of this nation because we have more than 28 banks operating in Kisii town, and we have more than 60% of money circulation originates from the Kisii County. And therefore, it's very important that if that alone can be a factor, then we should be given an opportunity to be able to move on and be able to get an external addition, at least the most minimum, to get Bobasi constituency split into 2 rather than 1. And all those other areas like Homa Bay, they got nothing, and therefore they are entitled. Kitui, they got nothing, they're entitled to it. This is an area I will invite both the proponents of the BBI and the IEBC to be able to look at this and be able to agree on how they can treat this matter, because it's an important matter that needs to be treated well. Now, there are other issues that have been brought up which are unconstitutional that I think I will ask where there are typographical errors. I think we should go ahead and be able to amend those and be done with. But otherwise, on the basis of that and barring of what I've already said, and I've already expressed my opinion, and this is the opinion of the people of Kisii County and in Nyamira as well, I believe that we are entitled to that constituency and we should negotiate and we shall not tire until we are able to get that constituency in place. I support this bill. Thank you.
Asante sana. Nafikiri tunaweza kuamka sasa. Waheshimiwa maseneta, ni wakati wa kuahirisha kikao hiki cha seneti. Kikao hiki cha seneti sasa hivi kimeahirishwa mpaka kesho Jumatano tarehe 5 Mei mwezi wa 2021 saa 2:30 katika ukumbi wa bunge la kitaifa saa 8:30 wakati wa kuwa na kikao cha jumla kwa bunge lote zima.